Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. And thank you for subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I'm 12 Kyle. Check this out. On this podcast, what I'm going to do is give you my recap of the year 2020. To say that 2020 was different is a huge understatement, right? I don't think, in fact, I'm pretty sure none of us who, came into 2020 thinking that it was going to be what it was. And I always go back, and when I think about, 2020, I go back to 2019. I have a picture in my phone. The picture was taken December 31st, 2019. And it was, the last evening of that particular calendar year. And in the picture is a picture of me, my wife, Sharice, our sons, Dion, Cameron, Brandon, and our daughter, Skylar. And we're all smiles and we're at church, which is where we brought 2020 in, brought the new year in church, which is not something that, which is actually something that we try to do each year. But, we were all smiles and service was good. And the thing that I take from that photo is just the looks on our faces and the I guess you could say the optimism of what 2020 would bring. And again, none of us are fortune tellers, so nobody knows what the future holds, and nobody knows, what you'll see in the upcoming year. But I do remember, being sitting there in the service, and I remember our pastor of our church, he coined the phrase. He said, "There will be plenty in 2020." I was like, okay, that's cool. But, I go back to that picture and I just, I just, when I see that picture of us, much like everybody else that particular night, we had a certain level of optimism for what 2020 would be. None of us could foresee what 2020 actually was. Obviously, if you're talking about 2020, one of the biggest stories in 2020 was the coronavirus, COVID-19, whatever you want to call it, the Rona. I just remember, I go back and I'm trying to think, like, my first thoughts of hearing what it was. It was probably late in January when I first heard about it. And it was one of those things that, something that was overseas, and, I follow the news, but I wasn't really following coronavirus like that, to be honest. And, they were talking about it was taking people out. But I mean, honestly, it kind of, for me, fell on deaf ears because, I'd seen this kind of stuff come and go. There was the swine flu, the bird flu, other, diseases that have come and gone and, didn't really affect us here. Or at least, not in a major way. So, honestly, I, much like everybody else, it was truly flying up under the radar for me. And then things started to turn probably towards February. Started getting more news about cases, and it was something that was overseas, but now, because of travel, just like anything else, it's going to eventually make its way to the United States. And, something that kind of spread. And, then I think it was around March where by the time mid February, end of March, I mean, it was already here. It was, devastating, like places like New York City. It was just out of control. And, so one of the biggest things that I take from the coronavirus and the spread of it, and just how the blatant disregard for health and mismanagement that the leaders of this country did was, basically they chose money over people. Because at first it was like, okay, let's, it was a major push. Okay, hey, we're going to, we're going to wash our hands. We're going to social distance, and we're going to wear a mask. And I'll get to mask in just a second. But, for some people, it became, it was a joke. It was from some other idiots, they pushed it off as a hoax. And then you had the leader of the free world, your man Duke. Duke gets all the intel on the virus, and he just bypasses it like it's something. It was a China virus. He had all of these stupid little names for it. But the thing about COVID-19 was that it wasn't going anywhere. So it was until we fought it, it was going to be here to stay. And so, again, initially there was a push to, take care of yourself, take care of, your neighbor, look out for yourself, look out for your neighbor. But then after a while, that lasted for about a month. I remember by the time March rolled around, we had pretty much gone on a shutdown here in Georgia. I live in Atlanta. And, it was a shutdown. We weren't going to work anymore. Fortunately, I was able to work from home from my job. And, it wasn't going to work anymore. Kids were out of school. Everybody was online. And so, it was just something where it was like, no, you can't go here. You can't go there. The only place you pretty much could go was the grocery store. If you went and ordered food and you need to order takeout, the whole nine. So we did that. And again, that lasted for about, a couple weeks, maybe a month or so. And then after that, again, things changed, and the powers that be, the leaders of your state, leaders of your community, leaders of your cities, leaders of this country decided that, hey, money is more important. We got to get this bread. So we're going to get this money any way we can. And one thing that I learned when I was in college at South Carolina State University, I had a professor by the name of Dr. Cole, financial management professor. Shout out to Dr. Cole. I know you're listening. Dr. Cole said, even in the roughest of times, even in pandemics, even in global depression, there will be a sector of people that will make tons of money. And you know what? I never forget when Dr. Cole said that, and it still stands out to me to this day, some 20 plus years later. Yeah, we're in a global pandemic, but somebody's making money. And so you had to kind of look around, but you didn't have to look far to understand who was making money and how money was being made. Of course, if you're in a global pandemic, lives are being lost, money's being lost, businesses are closing, so forth, so on. The whole nine. I get it. But yeah, the powers that be, this country say, okay, look, after a point, it wasn't about, hey, wash your hands, wear a mask, social distance, don't go anywhere, quarantine in your house. It just became, okay, hey, y'all can do what y'all want, but we're going to get this bread, And so it wasn't necessarily surprising because I've seen this country do this before, but, it's, that's where we were. So, the coronavirus, dominated the news headlines and everything. And, it became a point where, again, the push was, hey, the CDC, the The CDC and my man Dr. Fauci said, look, put on a mask. Oh, buddy, bruh, it was a problem with that. Because you had a segment of people who didn't feel like, one, that this virus was real, and then two, wearing a mask became a political statement. How that happened, I'm not exactly sure. Of course, I know how it happened, but still. Yeah. So if you were wearing a mask, that was violating my rights. No, it's not violating your rights. Basically, if you wear a mask, what you can do is you can protect yourself. More importantly, you can protect the next man from catching this and transmitting this virus. And it became a divisive issue, and I'll touch more on it. Mask and politics, because there's a politic podcast coming, and I don't even talk about politics, but there's one coming, so stay tuned. But yeah, so the movement went from, hey, let's protect ourselves, let's hunker down, whatever the case may be, is like, look, it's everybody for himself. You're infringing on my rights. I have the right to go to the grocery store and not wear a mask. I have the right to, go out to eat to dinner and not wear a mask, and you can't make me, And I think one of the things that this pandemic has taught me of many things is that it's one thing to tell people, it's one thing to say, okay, well, this isn't available, or you can't do this. And it's another thing when you tell particularly privileged people, you can't go here, you can't do this, you're going to do this way, and that way, and there's nothing you can do about it. And privileged people, no, they don't take too kind to, let's get around the elephant in the room. Some white folks, not all, but some, a lot of white folks, they don't feel like you can tell them what to do. Black people too, to some degree, but for the most part, I think most black people will comply and fall in line when you tell them to do something. Now, there's always gonna be a segment, it's gonna be like, nah, we ain't doing that, cuz. But at the end of the day, a mask is not a political statement. What it is it's protecting you. More importantly, it's protecting the spread. So we went through, the entire year. And here's the funny thing. Well, not funny, but as the months increase, the numbers, I think the transmission and stuff kind of slowed down. And then right around Memorial Day, when the CDC was saying, look, kind of chill on the cookouts and chill on the going to the beach. Oh, no, you can't take away our summer. We got to do this. We got to do that. And then the numbers skyrocketed. And the numbers have been, cases and deaths, have gone up ever since then. And I mean, by the time Thanksgiving hit, I mean, like it's we are, at the time of this recording, we are losing more people dying in this country a day than we lost in the total that we lost in 9/11. So imagine 9/11 happens, and I think we lost like 3,000 people. I don't have the numbers in front of me. And we're losing that every day in this country. Every day. Because people don't want to wear masks. They don't want to social distance. They don't want to be told what not to do. So the coronavirus has been here to stay. I will say this, and I'll talk more about the coronavirus on another podcast, but you don't need me to tell you what it is and how we get past it. And I mean, obviously now at the time of this recording, there are vaccines and people are getting vaccinated, and soon the vaccinations will be available to all of us. And then, you have to make the decision as to whether or not you're going to take that vaccine and whether or not you're going to, wear a mask for the rest of your life. I don't know. It was interesting for me to see sports, kind of move along. Basketball was the first sport that was hit, and actually the first sport that shut down when Rudy Gobert from the Utah Jazz tested positive for the coronavirus. The NBA said like, and the NBA was like, nah, we shutting this down. Shut the whole thing down. And then Major League Baseball shut down before they even got started. NFL adjusted and they shut down. And every major sporting event shut down. And they did that. And, so now not only we were on quarantine, but, there's no sports. And it was interesting. It was an interesting summer. And then, they said, okay, well, hey, we'll bring it back. The NBA said, we bring it back. We're going to go into a bubble and we're going to finish our season and we'll play in front of no fans and we'll, get through it. And to their credit, the NBA did. There was not, when they went into the bubble, there was not one positive test in the bubble. And they were able to finish their season and crown the LA Lakers and LeBron James as champions. But other sports who did not go into a bubble were not as successful. The NFL has struggled to the finish line. College football, Major League Baseball did crown a champion, the LA Dodgers, and one of the most 2020 things of 2020 was that a member of the Dodgers tested positive for coronavirus, played in the game, in the final World Series game, got notified that he had tested positive. The Dodgers go on to win the game. Let me go back. Before he got pulled from the game in like the 6th inning, right? Game goes in 9 innings. So they pull him out the game and say, hey, bro, you got to go sit over here and chill out. Your test came back positive. And so he's over there chilling in the locker room by himself. And then so the Dodgers go on and win. And the most 2020 thing happens. They win. And this guy comes out on the field to celebrate with his teammates without a mask on. And subsequently passes the virus to other people as they're celebrating the championship. I mean, 2020 has been hell, man. But sports, they struggle through it, and they will continue to struggle through it because, they're trying to get money. Again, money over people. What else happened in 2020? Obviously, one of the biggest stories that happened in 2020 was the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis. To say that it was crazy is an understatement. If you didn't catch it, George Floyd was allegedly passing off some fake money in some store or something like that in Minneapolis. And they called the cops. Cops, got rough with him, took him down, and officers held him down while one officer had his knee on his neck and basically murdered him right there on the streets of Minneapolis, all while being filmed for the entire world to see. It was, I'll be honest, I have not and will not watch that video. I just couldn't. In fact, I don't watch any cop killing videos where cops kill citizens, Black Americans. I don't watch those videos because they're triggering to me as someone who has had run-ins with the police. That ain't something that I do. But George Floyd in particular, for a lot of people, was the final straw. It was the line in the sand, if you will. It was, for some, it was the proof that, hey, this exists. Police brutality, hate crimes, whatever you want to call it. That's what it was. And I mean, again, it was for the entire world to see because it went viral and it made the news and there were protests. And I don't want to tell you that there were just protests in Minneapolis. There were protests everywhere. When I say everywhere, I mean everywhere. And the Black Lives Matter movement was pushed to the forefront. And, it was, this year was, I continue to say that this year was heavy, but this burden that we share as black people, with the fear of being killed and murdered by those who are hired, those who are here to serve and protect us, is simply unacceptable. And that's a fear that most people don't have. You know, as a black person, as a black man, that's something that I fear. I fear for my children. I fear for myself when those blue lights come on. I've been, in front of those blue lights and, routine traffic stop. I remember one time a cop stopped me and said, "Hey, you got your hat on backwards." Huh? But that's another story for another day. But nonetheless, George Floyd's murder set off this country. From that moment this spring through the summer was a powder keg, and it was like one after the other. Had a young man in Georgia, rural Georgia, who was jogging through a neighborhood and was hunted down by these three white guys, shot and killed him. They went to jail, obviously, but still, he was just running through a neighborhood, and again, caught on tape. We had an incident here in Atlanta. This guy at a Wendy's, he got pulled over. Actually, he went to Wendy's, fell asleep, and it was crazy because he fell asleep at Wendy's, and he fell asleep in the line, in the car, in the drive-through line. The people at Wendy's could have and should have, knocked on the window, "Hey man, wake up," whatever the case may be. They call the cops. Cops running through a whole bunch of field sobriety tests. They say, "Okay, hey, we're going to take you in." And he panics. He gets into a fight with both of the cops, start whooping their ass. He takes off running. They shoot him in the back in the Wendy's parking lot in front of everybody. Shoot him in the back as he's running away. Killed him. Atlanta exploded. I mean, it's wild because this is where I live, and to see that happen, see buildings and stuff on fire where people have just had enough. And for the better part of a month, there was a protest and a nightly standoff between the people and the police for about a month. It was crazy because I could turn on the news and I could see places where I normally hang out at or kick it at, and they were going head to head with the police. And not only were they going toe to toe with the police, but they even brought in armored trucks and riot gear and the whole night. This was a nightly thing. It's crazy because there were peaceful protests most of the day, and then as nightfall came, it was like a war zone. Breonna Taylor in Louisville, cop serving a warrant, kicks in the door, shoots up the apartment, wrong apartment, kills innocent Breonna Taylor. I mean, honestly, with the number of people who were killed, number of black people, let me be more specific. The number of black people who were killed by the police this year is nauseating. I honestly, I can't even run off half the names because it was like it was happening every other week. But George Floyd was, his, given the fact that it was caught on camera, because, and to be honest, for a lot of people, let me rephrase that. A lot of white folk, not all, but some, they didn't believe that what black people were saying as far as, hey, we're being brutalized by the police. We're being killed innocently by the police. And, oh no, it could have been something. It must have been something. I remember a couple of years ago here in Atlanta, there was a guy I think this guy was like strung out on drugs or something. He was running through this apartment complex and he was naked, butt ass naked. Didn't have any clothes on. Somebody called the cops, and the cops said that he made an aggressive move at him, so they shot him. I mean, he's naked. He ain't got no gun. I mean, and so these things happen, and they happen way too much. And here's the thing that we want to stress: we don't want to be killed by the cops. Period. Point blank. We don't want to be killed by the cops. The cops are here to serve and protect. We want the same benefit of the doubt. We want the same whatever you want to give for the next man, for the white man, for whomever. We don't want to be killed by the cops. Period. Point blank. But George Floyd's murder, set off a powder keg in this country. There were protests damn near everywhere. And then I mean from major cities to small town America. Protests. And the phrase of the summer was Black Lives Matter. And I took that with a grain of salt because I do know that Black Lives Matter. It's not all lives matter. It's not blue lives matter. It's not your cousin them lives matter. It's Black Lives Matter. Because we do. And the Black Lives Matter movement isn't a terrorist organization. It is people who are standing up for their rights. We don't want no smoke. Honestly. Black people in this country. Let me say this very clearly. Black people in this country want equality. That's it. We don't want your jobs. We don't want your house. We don't want your car. We want the same opportunity to get everything in life as the next person, as the white person, as whomever. That's all. If we wanted revenge, if we weren't the type of people that we are, if we wanted revenge, it'd be hell to pay. I had an old head tell me one long time ago when I was coming up, if black folks treated white folks like white folks treated black folks, we wouldn't be here. Nobody. And that's through history. I mean, you don't need me to give you a history lesson on how we have been treated and, done in this country. But that's what we want. We want equality. That's it. I want to be able to walk down the street, and if I have an encounter with the police, I don't want to end up dead. Because trust me, my white friends don't end up dead. They don't. We want to be able to go to the park and walk our dogs and not have white women call the cops on us. That's what we want. Simple. Not asking for much. But like I said, the whole movement I took it with a grain of salt because after George Floyd, there was this huge, and Breonna Taylor, there was this huge swell of emotion in this country. Well, we know Black Lives Matter. You had all of these Fortune 500 corporations getting, their money and everything and advertising dollars, and they were showing up on the websites. Hey, Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter. And it became like the thing. And I'm like, okay, that's cool that you put it on your website. But what happens when the wave, hits the land? You can ride the wave, but what happens once the wave hits the shores? What are you going to do then? Or what are you going to do when the next black man gets killed or next black woman gets killed? So yeah, it was like I said, 2020 was hard enough to deal with. Dealing with the coronavirus was hard enough to deal with, but this year, Black Lives Matter, George Floyd again, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and so many other names. I lose track because it was just way too much. But yeah, that became the thing, and for those who, it was weird for me because I remember riding through this really ritzy white neighborhood in downtown. And I know not a lot of black folks live over there, right? So I'm riding through and I saw at least 10 Black Lives Matter signs in their yards. And I'm like, word? This is what we doing. I mean, we appreciate the support, but to quote the great Kendrick Lamar, when shit hit the fan, is you still a fan? So when it goes down again, are you still riding with us? We need you to be an ally, not just because it's something cool to say or cool to put on a t-shirt or cool to post on your social media. Ride with us at the polls. Ride with us when it's time for real change to be enacted. But yeah, it was heavy, man. It was draining, and we are still fighting for a lot of those rights. And we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, these cops, they murder black citizens, and then somehow, some way, they get off. In the Breonna Taylor case, nobody found guilty. Family won a lawsuit. Everybody go home. Nah, it's not happening like that. And the next time that it happens, the country's going to explode again because people are on edge. People are tired. We're tired. One of the biggest things that help the civil rights movement get pushed to the forefront is that you had so many, not only obviously you had black people, in the streets fighting every day, but check your history. Part of the reason why the civil rights movement moved as quickly as it did, as far as getting legislation passed, was, man, you had white folks that were just tired of turning on the TV seeing black people getting dogs put on them and, sprayed down with fire hoses. And they got tired of it. And I want to feel like what we experienced this summer with Black Lives Matter, that moment has happened again. Time will tell. Time will definitely tell. But, like I said, that, as far as that was concerned, man, I could go on and on. It was so heavy. What else happened in 2020? Oh, Decision 2020. I won't get too deep into the election because, as I said, there will be a podcast. This election was, oh my gosh, it was draining. And just like 2020, I mean, like it was draining beyond belief. Personally, I did not see, I didn't even see Kamala Harris, running for president, let alone becoming Joe Biden's running mate. Not because she wasn't qualified, because she's more than qualified, but I just didn't see that happening. I figured that it would be down to Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders, and then of course your man Duke. I mean, this guy's having pep rallies, people with no masks, these super spreader events, and people are getting the coronavirus and dying just by going to his his events. So it was, yeah, I mean, like, you're the leader of the free world and you're out here without a mask on and you're shaming people for wearing masks. And then you have this meeting at the White House, and what was it, like 30 people caught the coronavirus, including the president of the United States. Now, it can't be more 2020 than that. The guy who actually said the coronavirus was a joke or suggested that it was a hoax actually caught the Rona. Now, he got rid of it pretty quick, but he got it. For those of you who, and there's some people that don't think that he didn't get it. I was skeptical at first, but he couldn't have gotten it and not. I don't think he would have wasted away 2 weeks of campaigning and all of the stuff he was doing if he had not been truly sick. And then, I mean, subsequently, everybody in the White House got it. So, But yeah, man, I mean, ultimately, Joe Biden, not Joe Budden, Joe Biden wins the presidency. I mean, in a landslide. And again, I'll talk about more. I'll talk about it more. There'll be a podcast in a couple of weeks, right before Biden and Harris go into office. But yeah, it was comical, man. It was comical. I mean, like the recounting of the votes, and I remember seeing a tweet saying like, "Why are we doing a recount so he can re-lose?" I mean, it was just it was just crazy, man. I mean, like other countries had to be like laughing at us because Duke goes out and says, "Hey, I won." When you clearly could see on TV that the state that he claimed that he won, or the states that he claimed that he won, he was just ahead. You can't claim Pennsylvania when only 40% of the vote is in. Yeah, you were at 60%, but they hadn't finished counting them ballots, bruh. And, again, part of the reason why we've never had so many mail-in ballots. And the reason being is that, Duke threatened to, mess with the mail. And then Duke also said, well, hey, we're going to do this to the election. So he and his administration and his cronies were doing everything that they could to suppress the vote. And so people were left with the decision. I had the same decision because I was very skeptical about going and standing in line around a bunch of people, with the virus. I was skeptical about that too. I was like, so I asked for a mail-in ballot. Didn't use it. I ended up voting in person, but still. And I'll talk more about that on the political podcast. But yeah, decision 2020. I mean, it was a joke. And the people have spoken. The people have spoken. I think Joe Biden had like 80 million votes. And he had like 8 million more than Duke. And Duke's still running around here talking about he won. Fuck out of here, man. But yeah, 2020 was also heavy. Because of the coronavirus, we had to adjust life. We had to adjust to life and how things were. Just on a personal note, I experienced, a lot of, I don't want to say a lot, but more than enough of my share of losing folks and deaths. I can tell you that I know people that passed away from the coronavirus. Not anybody in my immediate circle or my family or anything like that, but nonetheless, when you have people, when you have people pass away, I mean, like it's hard to deal with, and then it makes it even harder when you can't even give them the type of celebration that you wanted to give them, a homegoing service and celebrate their lives, because you can't assemble people. You have to do that very meticulously now, and that has changed over time. But like I said, it's a lot of deaths, man. I mean, like one of the biggest ones that hit me obviously was and I talked about it on the podcast. Actually dedicated a podcast to talking about the death of Kobe Bryant. Well, the life and death of Kobe Bryant. As I mentioned on that particular podcast, I wasn't, for most of his career, I wasn't a fan of Kobe. In fact, I hated. I might even say I hated Kobe. I didn't like Kobe, but I think the latter part of his career, I put my hate aside because I realized that I was missing out. And I think you as a fan, you don't want to miss some of the best years because you just being a hater. Now, I recognize his talent. I never could deny his talent. But, I had little silly reasons for, knocking him. But, the latter part of his career and his post career, I mean, dude was cool as hell. I mean, just one of the people that you always want to hear and listen to and, get words from. And I think those last couple of years, looking back on his life, I think Kobe probably, was, preparing himself for things even bigger than what he did in his career. And, I remember getting the news that, his, the helicopter he was in, tragically crashed and killing him and his daughter. And I think it was 6 others. And that was tough, man. I mean, like, I just remember, cause I came up in there like Michael Jordan's my guy. Right. And Jordan will always be my guy. And what was interesting for me was that, my now 21-year-old son, Dion, Kobe's his guy. Kobe's his Jordan. And so that was, talking to him about it. I knew he loved Kobe, but I didn't know it was like that. And, just fans all across the world. And it's just sad. I mean, it's still weird, to even think about Kobe not being here. One other death that, rocked us pretty hard was, our friend Kim Hayward. Kim battled cancer for, I don't know, 10 years maybe? Kim is the wife of one of my best friends, Ryan. And if you know me, Ryan's my dude. Grew up across the street from me growing up. And was like a little brother to me. And, what was interesting was Kim had beaten cancer. And, she beat it, I think, 2 or 3 times. And, this last time, things have been tough and she just couldn't fight it. And it was tough because, they have 3 kids. And, I remember I remember talking to Ryan, and Ryan told, Ryan, they met in college at Clemson. And I remember Ryan telling me about her. And, that was, so I go back to those conversations of like when they first met and going to their wedding and stuff like that. And it's just, and then seeing them, raise 3 beautiful children, who are all in, like high school and middle school. And, it's tough. It's tough. And, I'm still and always praying for them and Ryan, cause that's my guy, but that was tough losing Kim. And I think Kim passed away in March. Kim's funeral was the last time that we were in public with a bunch of people because the coronavirus was coming. Well, I can't say it was coming. It was really here. But that was the last time that I assembled with a bunch of people in a crowd, in 2020. And that was like the first week of March. So yeah, that was tough. That was tough. I mean, and I remember being at the funeral and I told my wife, I was like, this might be the last time that we can do this or, just be in a place with people. And service was beautiful and everything like that. But, still just, we had hand sanitizer there, but, it wasn't, the spread hadn't been that bad to the point where, we were overly concerned. But, to be honest, we probably shouldn't have. But it was a beautiful service nonetheless. And then the last death that rocked me was my cousin Tara. Tara passed away in March as well. And she too had battled cancer for the better part of the last 7 or 8 years. And, it was tough. And it still is tough because Tara's, and I wrote about her on my blog. She is like one of the funniest people you'd ever want to meet. I mean, like, she's only, a year or so older than me. Well, actually, almost 2 years older than me. We're first cousins. Her mom and my dad are brother and sister. And, what was interesting, and I talked about it on the blog, was that like we never talked about cancer. never, like she'd say, "Hey, I'm kind of tired today," or whatever the case may be, and we would always text, we would always call each other, and I just remember, you know, early, I'd probably say like January, the phone call. I remember she called me on my birthday, which was December 9th of last year, and she left me a voicemail, and I did not know that I still had the voicemail. I still have it, and I listen to it from time to time, and but January rolls around, and I called her a couple of times. I couldn't, she didn't answer, and it's just weird because normally she'll answer, and she texted me, and she was like, "Hey, I can't talk. I'm kind of tired. I'll call you back." And we talked again, but that was, we didn't have any. I don't think we had any more long conversations after January. And again, like I said, she passed in March, and but I did, we did get word that her body was shutting down, and right before she passed, actually the day before she passed, her sister Timby reached out to me, and she said, "Well, look, I'm at the hospital with Tara. You probably should call." She was like, "Call me back, and I'll let you talk to her." And I talked to her, and I knew at that particular time that was going to be the last time that I talked to her. And she we didn't talk long, but we had an actual conversation. And one of the things she said was, "I'll see you on the other side." That's one of the last things she said, and she said, "I love you." Then we got off the phone. And obviously it was emotional for me. I didn't show any emotion, when we were on the phone, but it was emotional because I knew that it was still surreal. And Tara. Why did I say Tara? Tara was she was going to turn 50 on September 29th. So it was bittersweet. It was bittersweet, but she's gone. Definitely not forgotten. Like I said, we have a love and a bond, and that'll never go away. So she's looking down over us, laughing, because that's what she did. There were some good things that happened in 2020. It wasn't all doom and gloom. Our son Cameron graduated from high school. That was cool. It was dope. I'm happy. I was really happy for him. All of my kids adjusted probably a lot better than I would have in a global pandemic. But to be in high school, and March comes around and everything gets shut down, and they say, "Okay, hey, no more school," and you lose your senior trip, you lose senior prom. There is no graduation. I mean, his graduation literally was virtual. I mean, like, we watched the graduation, from our living room. They had presenters and stuff like that, but he did not physically walk across the stage. He was actually in the room with us. So that was different. And, it was an adjustment, but he graduated and he went off. I can't say he went off to college, because he actually went off to college, but he stayed here. He did his first semester online, and he'll actually be on campus in the spring. But I'm proud of him, and proud of all of our kids for how they adjusted, because it was a lot. But we did manage to throw him a couple of graduation parties. We had one party outside, and actually both parties were outside. I take that back. He had a graduation party and a birthday party. But we were able to do that in social distance and, be safe and everything like that. So that was cool. Right around the time that he graduated, a company reached out to me about, employment. And I was like, word? Because I was at my company. I can't say it was okay. My company was okay, but I was like anybody else. I'm like, look, y'all got to cut the check, man, for what I'm doing here and my value that I feel like I bring. Got to cut the check, a bigger check. And I think the company that I was with, the final straw was we had a meeting in February, and they talked about all of the money that the company brought in, and you start figuring out, okay, how much money you contributed to that. And they were like, okay, hey, this is what your bonus is going to be. And I'm like, when I saw the bonus, I was like, word, for real? This is what we doing? I was like, nah, man. I was like, I'm not doing this. And so, I did a couple of phone interviews with a couple of people, a couple of companies, after that, but nothing serious. But this company actually reached out to me, and, out of the blue, I didn't post anything. I never sent, at that particular time, I hadn't sent one resume out. And long story short, so they reached out to me, and it was like, okay, we'd like to bring you in for an interview, everything, whatever. She was like, the lady was like, real cool. And she was like, you'll interview with this person, that person. So within a span of like, it was 5 days, I did 4 interviews. So at that point, it was just like really about them offering me, the job. And, money should never be an issue, but it was going to be an issue for me because I told them up front, like, look, I don't want to waste your time, but, and I'm not going to negotiate back and forth. I'll tell you what I want, and then we'll go from there. And when I told them what I wanted, it was like, all right, cool. In fact, to be honest, I think I probably, looking back on it, I probably should ask for more, but I thought it was going to be a back and forth, and, they were all in. They saw the value and they saw the vision. So I was like, okay, cool. And so, I switched jobs. And so it's funny because when I handed in my resignation letter to the company I was working with, my manager was like, is there anything we can do to keep you? And I was like, honestly, no. I was like, because if I tell you what I'm asking for, you're not going to pay that to me, because if you could have, you would have. So that was funny to me, them asking me that, because I was like, there's no way, y'all not going, you're not. So, and I don't want anybody to, think that I got a, Kevin Durant contract or something, because I'm broke. But anyway, nevertheless, so I switched jobs, and this job is a cool job, work from home permanently, and it's dope. I love it. What else happened? Oh, 2020. I mean, we hit 20 years. Did a podcast on that. Sharice and I celebrated 20 years of marriage. The years have flown by. Honestly, it's funny because now I look at pictures and stuff, and I look at pictures like of us early in our, marriage, and I'm like, where did these people go? And I don't think we look much different. There's gray hair on my face and not hers. but yeah, it's been a blessing. So I mean, you can't ever complain about being married for 20 years. So it's been a blessing. And last but not least, your boy hit 48 in 2020, and the next podcast, which will be a bonus podcast, will come out. I'll talk about my birthday and how I celebrated, and bought the birthday in LA in the midst of a global pandemic. So yeah, it 2020 was a year, man. It was a lot, and I keep going back to that picture of us as a family in church smiling. What will 2021 look like? Will some of you be on that new year, new me? I mean, honestly, I don't really know how much 2021 will be different than 2020. Because we'll still be fighting this virus. We'll have our worlds, in the quote unquote new normal. And, the only thing I can tell you is that, we have to kind of really go by something else that our pastor always talks about. Be safe, be sanitized, and be sane. Those 3 things you got to do, So, and I think sometimes being sane is probably the hardest thing to do, but it's what we have to do. We just got to continue to be who we are and just kind of have a plan and go forth with that plan. I'm never big on resolutions or anything like that, but I think, something my dad always tell me, make your plan, work your plan. As simple as that. Not sure what 2021 will look like, but as we look back on 2020, in the good and the bad, the one thing that I will say is we got a chance to see it. So no matter how bad it was, and we got a chance to see it, and we had to adjust. I mean, like, I remember one of my homeboys, shout out my boy Bobby, he got married this year, and we had to watch his wedding online because we couldn't be there. And I know people who had to watch funerals, watch their loved ones be buried online. I mean, like, the same for when Tara passed. At the time that she passed, like, New Jersey was crazy, so you could only have 3 people at the funeral, and 5 people, and of the 5 people, like, 2 of the people had to be the people at the burial site. So you can only have 3. So how do you decide which 3 family members get to go? It's just, it was a lot. So it was a major adjustment. And I will say this much: people were able to adjust, and I think there's something to be said about that. We've been able to adjust in the new normal. And again, 2020 was heavy, but ultimately we got a chance to see it. So whether or not it was good or bad for you, or just, whatever, ultimately we can say what we want, but we got a chance to see it. And that is a blessing in and of itself. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks again for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I'm your boy 12 Kyle. I'll catch you guys next time. 5,000.